Who is this up-and-coming generation? They call them millennials, and they include anyone born in 1982 up through the present. Across numerous researchers, students in the millennial generation are consistently described as having the following 7 characteristics. The first is special, meaning that they have always been treated as special and important, and every milestone of their lives have been marked with celebration and praise. Therefore, they feel a sense of entitlement and expect frequent and continuous praise. Second, the millennials are sheltered. They were rarely left unsupervised by their parents and were highly protected. They're confident, goal-oriented, and motivated. They expect to go to college and do great things. The millennials are team-oriented rather than being individualists. They're achieving but pressured. Millennials focus on good grades, hard work, and extracurricular activities, but they have very structured, scheduled lives and feel the pressure to succeed. Lastly, the millennials are conventional. They're respectful to not question authority, and they support and believe in social rules. Many attribute these characteristics to the way the millennials were raised by their baby boomer and Gen Xer parents. The baby boomers and Gen Xers were both self-absorbed. Gen Xers particularly felt unprotected and felt they had to raise themselves. In turn, when these two generations had kids, they wanted to be involved in every aspect of their child's lives. They coddled their kids too much. In addition to the 7 characteristics mentioned earlier, when it comes to millennials in the classroom, they are multitaskers. They're technologically savvy, and they're influenced by a multicultural society, so they're accepting and open-minded. They bring a lot of skill sets. Teachers just need to know what teaching strategies work best to help these students learn. Here's a list of teaching strategies that researchers have suggested. Because millennials are team-oriented, they need opportunities to work in small teams. Give them clear team management structures and individualized roles. Teachers should give students options and choices whenever possible. They should provide incremental awards and frequent feedback. They should mimic video game structure by giving them ongoing rather than infrequent breaks with a mixture of quizzes, Web 2.0 projects, exercises, and PowerPoints instead of a lengthy test. Ways to reduce stress such as study guides, flexible deadlines, breaking up assignments. Overestimate their need for clarity and provide detailed directions, assignments, tests, syllabus, etc. Provide model examples of what you expect from students on papers and assignments. Tell them ahead of time that hard work alone does not get them A's. They need to show skill and ability too. Clearly define acceptable rules of classroom behavior. In a minute, I will be interviewing a teacher, Michelle Patterson, to get her input on the millennial generation. I'm here with Michelle Patterson, and we're going to be discussing the millennial generation. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
In your experiences and observations as a 4th grade teacher and now as a library media specialist, what would you consider the general characteristics of the millennial generation to be?
As I see the kids coming in from K to 5, and I see that they're coming in knowledgeable with a lot of instant messaging, technology, a lot of good skills that way. They seem to be interested in telling right away what they know. They want to tell you about them, and they like to have instant feedback. It seems like immediate gratification is important to them. After they tell you about themselves and they get comfortable in their peer groups, then we like to try to encourage them to develop social skills by doing cooperative learning. One of the examples is, maybe playing a game that you use technology, maybe a Promethean board or interactive game on a website, or get them to read together as a group with a Nook, something that they can have read to them first as a practice, and then they can read aloud independently later.
What skill strengths and gaps as well as preconceptions do these students bring to your class?
I think that many of the students come in thinking that they already know things. They're surprised when something is difficult and there's a higher level of learning to meet or a broadening of learning. It's interesting to get them to spread their wings, so to speak, and to say, that's right, that's a good start. Can you give me more? And I always get a surprised look like, well, isn't that enough? Yeah, it's enough, but tell me more. Inquiry. I think the inquiry method with these students is a big help, because you can continue to pull and draw on what they know. One of the gaps is maybe making connections between the things they do know, because they come in with their own learning agendas and skills, but when they have to connect a gap, to be able to use inquiry process to get them to draw conclusions from things they already know and put it together with the things they're just learning. Like reading in context, for example. You might come across words you don't know, but the other words will be able to help you. The pictures, the illustrations might give you an idea too. Or where have you seen or heard something like that before? So.
Okay, and what type of diverse instructional strategies have you found that work or don't work to teach these students? I know you touched on a few of them.
Right. There's so many available today. That's the beauty of our education. You know, with the cyber learning and with the technology tools, and even relating old-fashioned game learning individually or in groups, to be able to play a game. One of my favorites was using the Promethean board as a game board format and putting them in teams and letting them play, take turns coming up and rolling the dice, asking them questions about the almanac, and they had to work as a team. One was a reader, and one was a writer, and one was the dice roller, and one kept score, and then they take turns. And it was a short amount of time, only about 30 minutes. And when they were finished and they got the answers, if they were correct, that they could move their game pieces. And they enjoy that because they have a little bit of independent responsibility, and yet they get to work with a team. But it's hard. What I've noticed different about this generation than maybe 20 years ago, the kids today, if they lose, they try to blame the others, and they don't accept losing as easily. In the past, it seems like if they lost, they accepted it. Then we'll get them next time, and they had more of a acceptance of a loss and an ability to rationalize and say, this is just one game, there'll be other games, we'll have another turn. Immediate gratification is more evident. So success, they want to be successful all the time too, even if it's just a pat on the back or you've done a good job. They seem to expect that rather than working for it and earning it.
So it's just trying and then you get a pat on the back.
Yeah, they like to be rewarded often.
All right, well, thank you for sharing your thoughts with me today.
Sure, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, well, after doing the research and talking to Mrs. Patterson, I see that she has a lot of the same observations that researchers have had. She's also already using a lot of the teaching strategies that they have suggested. Just from her example of the Atlas lesson that she teaches, she's breaking her students into smaller teams, allowing them to choose their specific roles within their teams. She's giving them praise and rewarding them, the teams, for doing the assignments correctly. Like she said, the first team who did the assignment correctly got to go look for their books at the library first. She's also using interactive technology that's game-oriented. So I realize the characteristics and the needs of the millennials, but I also will continue to focus on each of the students as an individual. Being in special education, you can't generalize students' characteristics into a generation. I think it gives you a starting place if the majority of the students in that generation display the same learning habits, but it's not going to be true for all students. As the research suggested, I would like to incorporate more choices into students' learning. This is beneficial for not only millennial students, but also for students with different learning styles. So they could have a choice maybe of writing a paper or doing an art project or something more hands-on. So I think those choices of 2 different activities would really be beneficial to all students. I would also like to incorporate more small group activities of 2 or 3 students. And lastly, I would like to incorporate more technology-based assignments such as the Web 2.0 activities or PowerPoints. Millennials are an interesting generation with much to offer, to learn from, and to teach to.